It is deadline day for banks and large stressed companies. The 180-day deadline imposed by the Reserve Bank of India on the 12th of February. That 12th February circular for resolving stressed assets over 2,000 crore rupees ends today. And on this very day, the Reserve Bank circular has also got judicial backing. The Allahabad High Court has refused any interim relief for stressed power assets, which now face insolvency proceedings. Lata Venkatesh and Ritu Singh join us now to decode the implications of this. Ritu, let me come to you first. Where do things currently stand? How many companies could be heading to the bankruptcy court?
Well, RBI's Feb 12 circular gave banks a 6-month window to resolve large ticket defaulters, else send them to NCLT, and that 6-month deadline ends on the 27th of August. So in total, we're talking about 70-odd accounts that will fall under the purview of the Feb 12 circular as per our sources. But that does not mean that all of these will end up in NCLT. A large part of these cases are actually already in the process of being referred to the NCLT or have been referred to the NCLT, and banks are trying to resolve at least 15 to 16 of these cases outside the court proceedings. Now, most of the borrowers that are likely to be impacted belong to the power sector, and today, with the Allahabad High Court also not granting them any relief, banks are likely to push a lot of them into the NCLT. First up, the power sector. Now, banks feel these are about 7 to 8 cases, including Coastal Energen, KSK Mahanadi, Prayagraj Power, etc. These can be resolved outside NCLT as buyers have been identified or a restructuring proposal is in place. Then is the list of power companies where, banks have not been able to find any resolution and therefore are looking to refer these to the NCLT. That list includes Jindal India Thermal Power, Ratan India, etc. All of those are on your screen right now. Now, in the non-power category, which is a smaller category, banks are likely to refer cases like Punj Lloyd, like JBF Industries, like Garden Silk Mills, Rohit Ferrotech, Gitanjali Gems, etc. to the bankruptcy court. For instance, one of the borrowers here, Punj Lloyd, says it is working with banks to arrive at a settlement, but however, there are others where banks are hopeful they will find a resolution. That list in the non-power space includes names like Ballarpur Industries, Supreme Infra, Bombay Rayon, which now leaves us with the third category, and this is interesting because this remains a grey area. For instance, Reliance Communication, clearly a case under the Feb 12 circular purview. It is being heard in the NCLAT right now, and therefore banks are unlikely to move the NCLT on this until NCLAT settles the matter. To sum up, the good news is that there's no incremental pain for the banks because most of these accounts are already NPAs. But the bad news is that now the problem shifts to the NCLT, which is already clogged with several accounts that it is yet to resolve, and this will just add another set of problems.
All right, so that is the ground reality, and those are the 3 boxes largely that you need to look at to get a clear sense of what we're talking about. Ritu, thanks very much. As Ritu was pointing out, that the Allahabad High Court has refused to stay the 12th February circular by the Reserve Bank, dealing a blow to assets in the power sector. Almost 70% of the total stressed assets impacted by the RBI circular are from the power sector, and they had moved the court seeking special treatment or a carve-out. The court has rejected that. Let's listen into Harry Dole, the Director General of the Power Producers Association, clearly disappointed by this order and taking us through what impact this will now have.
There is no substantive relief given by Allahabad High Court, which is available today. However, there is the matter coming up in the Supreme Court tomorrow, where the Supreme Court had issued notice earlier on the transfer petition request of RBI, and the Supreme Court had said it will not interfere with the Allahabad order in spite of the Supreme Court lawyer pressing for it. Now, what it really means is that there's a window available for banks to press the button if they want to initiate proceedings. Now, if that happens, then some assets for which there are ready buyers will go through the process, and there'll be a massive haircut, which of course the public sector banks will have to take. Some people say 50%, some people say 70%, etc. But what is very important is that the number of power projects that are really in the resolution process, I'm given to understand around 7 to 8. Whereas the number of total stressed assets in the power sector which are presently at stake is around 40
Yes.
And it is likely to rise to about 80.
Okay.
So I think the thing to watch out for is what is the RBI going to do, what are the banks going to do, and what the government is going to do, and in what speed. Because merely going through this process, as we have repeatedly said before, is not going to resolve the problem.
Well, that's Harry Doll of the IPPAI, and that is important because that is what government sources are also telling us, is that this decision of the Allahabad High Court will now go beyond impacting just those 34 identified stressed power assets. But the government may, in fact, also consult the Reserve Bank under Section 7 of the RBI Act, as per the Allahabad High Court's order. Sapna Das joins us now with more. Sapna, the government so far, if you look at the Ministry of Finance, has made its position very clear that the Reserve Bank needs to provide a degree of flexibility. The Reserve Bank has said no can do, and this matter has been going back and forth for several months now. In light of what we've seen from the Allahabad High Court, are you getting a sense that the government may, in fact, give any directions, which is unprecedented, to the Reserve Bank?
Well, from the government's point of view, it appears to be a bit of a catch-22 situation, because right since the month of March, the government had made its intention clear that there should be some kind of a separate leeway for at least those thermal power assets which have been commissioned but have not yet reached the NCLT stage. However, the High Court has not given any interim extension or any kind of an extension on that front. So, keeping all of that in mind, two options clearly before the central government. One, of course, as per the Allahabad High Court order, government should initiate a consultation with the Reserve Bank of India. Keeping that in mind, what we are given to understand is that probably this entire consultation will transpire under Section 7 of the RBI Act, because there the powers to the central government are very clearly mentioned, that they have the right to give directions or issue directions to the banks. However, that will have to be done in consultation with Reserve Bank of India. The first level of consultation has to be held with the RBI governor, and later on, at the time of issuing the instructions, the deputy governor RBI, I mean, there are 4 of them, so there's an entire system that has been that is in place under the Section 7 RBI. But the question here is that will the government go ahead and give these kind of directions? Well, it's very unlikely, at least as of now. What we are given to understand very clearly is that possibly consultation could be an option, but what happens post those consultations, is something that the government really cannot hazard a guess at this point in time. So that's one, consultation with Reserve Bank of India. The second, of course, the banks themselves have 15 more days to, try and resolve at least some of those assets, or try and keep them outside the NCLT ring fence. So that's where the entire effort is. We're given to understand that 8 to 9 such of the commissioned thermal power assets, maybe in that list. Now, 1 or 2 are the ones, which may actually land up in NCLT, or even the number could be higher. The remaining, the banks are trying to resolve at their end. Let's see how that progresses. Of course, if none of this works out, if the consultations come to a kind of a standstill, or nothing emerges from there, or even if these 15 days resolution time period is insufficient, then clearly the government is also back to square one. The entire power sector is back to square one. Apart from this, the only good point that we need to keep in mind, and probably that's a big positive, most of the provisioning by the banks for these assets has already been done. That's what the understanding at the government's end is also. So probably that could be a positive, but bit of a catch-22 situation, no doubt, and we have to really keep an eye as to how this really pans out, whether the consultation happens, when it happens, how it happens, and what really transpires after that.
Lata, let's address this piece by piece. One, let's start with the power assets and the significance of the Allahabad High Court order and what this will actually mean for the power sector going forward. And then we'll talk about the non-power sector stressed assets.
Well, on the power assets itself, I think they will have to go to the NCLT. Now, there are several, ambushes on the way, if you please. Tomorrow, the Supreme Court is hearing a whole host of cases which are challenging the IBC itself, which are challenging the February 12th circular as well. And rest assured, the IPPAI will also go on appeal to the Supreme Court. So there can be several other speed breakers, so to speak, to take the cases to the NCLT. It could well be that in any of these, a stay could come. The way in which the Supreme Court has behaved so far, it has not given a stay to the proceedings under the IBC. It has said, I will hear the cases, but let the process of the NCLT go on. So chances are it may not also stop. That's one point. The other one is that, 35 cases or something under this February 12th circular, and 40 more to come according to Harry Dole. I can tell you that there are not so many buyers. There are a handful of buyers, and that is why the banks have been able to say that they're able to resolve only 5 cases. So if the total amount of stressed cases, you have it on the board, it's about 34 projects, 1.8 lakh crore. Probably 70 lakh crore they are looking for a solution at best. They have to take a haircut of maybe 70% in that, which means out of 1.8 lakh crore, the banks are expecting to retrieve maybe 30,000 crore or 40,000 crore. The rest of it are going into liquidation, no two ways about it. The reason why the Bank Nifty, the PSU Bank Index and the Sensex and the Nifty are at all-time highs on a day when the market is coming to terms with the fact that probably 1.2 lakh crore will have to go into liquidation is because this is in the price. This is provided. And the market, this is extremely well telescoped. So it is not as if, the world is coming to a close. It is unfortunate for the economy, but all this will go at distress sale to probably private equity guys or simply be scrapped.
Well, that was the point that Sapna was making, and I know that, Lata, you've been making it as well, that this hasn't come as an ugly surprise to the market because it's already been priced in, factored in from a provisioning perspective. But let's talk about the assets outside of the power sector, Lata. Now that the deadline ends today, as far as that 180-day period is concerned, where does this now leave the non-power stress side?
Well, non-power stress side also doesn't have much to speak for itself. I mean, there are companies like Punj Lloyd. They claim that they have some other resolution in place. But even over there, there is very little. Many of them are, for instance, EPC contractors. I mean, EPC contractors have nothing but their skill. What collateral? Why will anyone want to buy, say, a company like Gammon? Why would anyone want to buy those kinds of companies? So my sense is, in the first 12 cases, remember the steel cases, the banks were able to get 50%. In the next 29 cases that went in December, banks are expecting at best 30%. In this case, I think they will at best expect 20%. They're not getting more than that of their value. So there's really very little that banks can make. That is why they were asked to provide up to 65%, because the expectation anyway was that across the board, the loss given default in these cases could be very high. The loss could be as high as 70%. That's exactly why they were asked to provide between 65 and 70%. I'm not expecting much to come by. For me, the most interesting part is how the government is going to look at this Section 7 of the RBI Act.